Hi, I'm Ladios Muhammad. This is Living with Valor, and this is where we have intimate conversations or storytellings with spiritual beings who want to share their human experience. I'm your host today with Producer P, but before we tell you about our next guest, let's tell you a little bit about their history. Our guest was the youngest of 7 siblings with a single mother. He grew up in the projects on the islands of St. Thomas in the Virgin Islands. His mother worked at a nursing home during the day and went to school at night to help put food on the table. Growing up in a working, poor family, he experienced the impact of hunger and felt the emotional impact that housing instability had on his family. His first job was at the age of 18, and he became the first generation graduate from the University of Colorado at Denver. After a successful career protecting the financial health of educators and nonprofits, he and his husband, Mike, of 17 years, started their own business. Together, they elevate inclusion and equity within our city's most important social institutions and support the work of those in public service and nonprofits. He is also the chair of the Housing Stability Strategic Advisors, and he is currently running for City Council in District 9. Let's introduce our guest today, Darrell Watson. Hello, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing well, sister, and I got to tell you, Ladios, it's so good to see your face. You didn't share our mutual how we know each other.
That's I want to do while we was both on there.
Yeah. So I always feel elevated and happy when I see good people doing good and getting good done back to them. And so I've known you from our days back at Teachers Insurance Annuity Association, and I'm so proud of you and the great work that you're doing. So thank you for having me, and I feel very welcome being here.
Thank you for being here. Yeah, we go way back, and I was just, I've been, I stalked him on LinkedIn. Most of my guests I stalk on LinkedIn, but I'm ecstatic because I'm learning that you're running for City Council, District 9. Yes. But before we get into that, because I do want to talk about your political campaign, I'm so super excited. Yeah. I did not know you were from the Virgin Islands. I don't even hear an accent. Yeah. Does it come out?
No, I yank. And so if you get me in the right situation, the yanking cuts down. But my mom speaks complete patois. It's a broken English from back home, but it comes out every now and then. But I've been in the States since I was 17. I moved here when I was 17. Right. It's a long time ago. So my yanking, I blame it on Denver.
Okay. Well, let's tell a little bit about your childhood, because you talked about you grew up poor, and your mom worked hard, a single parent. Let's talk about that.
So, Ladios, I think what's so important for me and my story is growing up with a single mother, youngest of 7. You may think because we grew up in poverty and that we grew up without material means, that was an impact. Yeah. But it isn't. I really saw from my mother's resilience. She could do with 1 can of Spam and some white rice. She could make dinner for a week for 7 kids. I knew how tough it was for her, but she never showed that it was tough. She always was optimistic. She always was looking towards the future. You shared in my bio that she went to night school to get her GED while still raising 7 knuckle-headed little kids. It was not easy. She got her GED, and then she went on and got her nursing certificate and continued working. And what that has taught me is that money has some power, but truly, if you are rooted in family, if you're rooted in community, you're rooted in something more than material wealth, good things come to you. And she is and always has been my hero.
Nice. And so I know you mentioned that you had 7 siblings, correct?
Yes.
Brothers, sisters, how many brothers? And can I ask, where was your father in all of this?
Yeah, so it was 4 brothers, 2 sisters, and so
and you're the youngest.
And I'm the youngest of 7, okay. And my father and my mother separated when I was about 1 year old, and I also share that also is because my mom's resilience. She never once in all the years that we were growing up, and I met my father when I was 18 here in Colorado for the first time.
Wow.
Not one time did she speak an ill word of my father. I mean, she made it clear that we need to honor both parents. She stated that they didn't have a relationship that they could stay together with, but she did everything to make sure we knew that we were loved. And she gave us a life that I have no regrets in growing up with a single mom. I mean, I am who I am from my career, from my choosing to go to college, to a four-year university, to spending my career in financial literacy. All of it was because of this powerful woman.
Wow. And
to this day, she is, once again, still my hero.
Nice.
One of the reasons why I'm running for city council is because she kicked me in my butt and said, you need to make a decision. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. But,
we're totally getting to that. Do you have a relationship with your father at all?
We don't. And you know, I think the thing for black men and black families, it's important to have a two-parent family.
Yeah.
It's important to maintain a relationship with, especially if you're raised by a single mother and your father is not around. It's important to have that relationship with your father. I tried, and I'll be honest. I mean, I'm going to share some stuff some folks may not be aware of me. I mean, I met my father when I was 18 years old, and he was in prison here in Colorado. That was my first time meeting him. He was pointed out to me while in prison. I didn't even remember how he looked. And so once he got out, I began building a relationship with him. We became friends, but I think there is a level of pain that he felt not being around. I think he never believed that my mom was not the type of mother or woman who put him down over these years. And so he kept trying to communicate just what his value is, and kept trying to be my father. And at that point, an 18-year-old man going into my sophomore year in college, I just needed a friend. And so that friendship didn't work out, but I send blessings to him on a regular basis. I know from how my mother raised me to continue to love him, even though that father relationship didn't work. But that didn't mean that he was a failure. It simply meant, as adults, we were not able to keep a friendship, at least at the level that I wanted. Blessings to him, but I give all props to my mother for being that strong woman and not needing to put down the man in our life in order to elevate her spirit and all the good that she did for all 7 of us. And she is still doing to this day. She lives in Curtis Park right now, about a mile away from me. And so we see each other, pretty much every week.
You know what? That's so amazing. And I do believe, even if as parents, if we do have to go separate ways, you should always establish a good, healthy relationship with both parents instead of women, whispering in their children's ear and turning one another, each parent against one another. So I want to talk, give my hats off to your mother, because I did the same thing with my children, and I'm sure you know my story, but this ain't my story. This is your story. And so I just think that's phenomenal. So I hope to meet this dynamic woman.
You will.
I want to meet her. And so we're going to keep rolling and rolling to, I noticed you don't have any children.
No.
What's up?
Yeah, I contemplated being a father myself. However, being a youngest of 7, being a West Indian, all my brothers and sisters had enough kids to populate the world. And so being the best uncle was sufficient for me. And Ladios, the work that we did at TIAA. We mentored youth leaders from Manual High School to Bruce Randolph to schools across Denver. That's where I saw my opportunity to give back. But for my nieces and nephews across the country, we are so much involved in their lives. And that's good enough for me. That gives me a blessing and allows me to give back to folks.
Wow. And do you have any pets then?
Yeah, we have a little dog. Yeah. And you know what? I'm also clear. There's some folks who say that their pets are their children. Kai is not our child. Kai is a dog. He is our pet. We love him to death. Kai is he's his own person. Well trained. And there will be days we will tell him sit or heel or whatever, and he is bam.
But he is your pet, not
he's our pet. But then there's other days we say the same thing. He look at us and like, who are you? feed me and get out of my way.
Right.
So he is his own, he has his own experience. He listens when he wants to, he doesn't. We love him to death, but he's our pet. He's not our baby, he's not our child.
I love it.
We don't confuse that.
was that a picture of Kai on your website?
Yes.
Okay,
yes,
I figured I was like, okay, great.
Yeah, he has a great story. He's from a reservation in New Mexico, and oftentimes when you have he's a mixed breed dog.
Okay.
And we were intentional about identifying a mixed breed dog because when you have a full bred dog, the love that maybe brings that dog into from the breeding and all that stuff brings that into the world often isn't visited upon some of these mixed breed dogs. So he was on a reservation. We have no idea what his mix is, and we don't want to know. We don't care. We just love him.
Yeah.
But we found, finding him on a reservation, or the person who found him on a reservation and put him up for adoption, we thought that was we can give a better life to him than a dog that 3, 4, 5 folks could be fighting over.
Exactly.
For
thousands and thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
So, as you know, we went from St. Thomas to your beautiful childhood, even though you said you grew up very poor, but it wasn't poor. I like the way you emphasize that money isn't everything, because if you have a rich culture and background and family values, that can supersede a whole bunch of other stuff. So my question for you is, after you left teachers, what happened there? Where did you go?
Well, let me share a little bit about the why for teachers. I think it's important for folks to understand in the context of where I'm at today. So I deliberately chose financial literacy because my mom to this day doesn't own a credit card.
Wow.
Has never had health care, or has always been health care, whether it's from the state or from the city. And so I didn't grow up understanding what a checking account is, what a savings account is, what a credit card and how not to misuse it. And so I chose financial literacy because I understood building wealth in the Black community is not only necessary, it's a must for our generation, Latios. I think oftentimes, we idolize basketball players, or we idolize other folks who are making millions of dollars doing fantastic stuff, and I give props to them for what they do. But for our life, Latios, people like you and I, going to school, going into financial services, the day-to-day impact you can have on the Whittier community, the Cole community, Globeville communities, speaking to them about how to manage their basic income, I think it's important. So I stayed with TIAA, for Teachers Insurance Annuity Association, for 23 years because I knew I was enriching the lives of community members who looked like me. Little boys, little girls growing up in the projects whose parents didn't have time to talk about finances, but it's because of financial literacy is why they're going to break the chain of poverty in their family circle. So TIAA gave me those roots. I dug them deeper by digging into the work that I did and giving back to community over those 23 years. But it was time to go in 2020.
Yeah.
And so
that was during the pandemic. And I'm so glad you brought that up. I'm sorry I skated over that. I did not mean to, because you did mention this in your bio. But that was important because when I came to teachers, I was young, but I had learned so much about money. Yes. In fact, I bought my first house at the age of 28, and I had saved so much money due to the financial literacy that I furnished my house not on credit.
Yes.
And you're right, a lot of people, they don't know. And it's not about how much you have, it's how much you can keep.
That's right.
That because you get these ballers and they're trying to floss, but 9 times out of 10 they're broke.
Correct.
They don't really have money.
They're living on credit.
Yes, and here's another thing, is when you talk about net worth, that's just assets. How much is liquidable?
Yep.
That's the problem. They don't have that liquid assets. So that's important. Are you still educating financial literacy anywhere?
I am, and I'll add another quick point to add on to yours, before I go to that.
No,
so I bought my first house when I was 27.
Mm-hmm.
And I specifically sought out CHAFA, the Colorado Housing Association. I don't know what the FNA stands for, but CHAFA. But they provided me a grant.
Financial Association.
Association.
Colorado,
they provided me a down payment grant so that I can purchase my first home. So it speaks to your point, not doing this on credit.
Yes.
Ensuring that you can actually live within your means. And that first home I purchased in Whittier for $75,000. I sold it for $200,000 several years later.
Wow.
And I built that equity into my second home, and also providing a home for my mom.
That's
and so
wonderful.
It is a powerful thing to understand, ensuring that you balance building wealth with ensuring that your credit as well as your debt is balanced as well. And TIA gave me that leveling.
Right. You are so you were right. I bought my home too, and I bought it brand new. This is my second home, and so we're definitely going to get into housing because it's going to be all a part of my questions with your campaign. But as you have enhanced your knowledge about financial literacy, giving back, you've made some leaps and bounds financially, wealth-wise. I would say, abundantly. Wealth doesn't always mean numbers, but it does mean what you can use as leverage. Where did you go from there?
Yeah, and this was an important transition, and it caught me a little bit off guard. I wasn't expecting this, but the Governor Polis appointed me to the Colorado Secure Savings Program Board. And what that board is, there are over 900,000 Coloradans today that do not have access to a retirement account. So whether they're in the gig industry, or they are work for restaurants, or they're in construction, or they just have a lot of different careers and they have not been able to stick with a company like a TIAA to build retirement income. There's over 900,000 Coloradans who go day to day, pay their bills, go to work, and then when the time comes for retirement, they have nothing, not even a small mutual fund or a money market account. So how I have given back post TIAA is on that board. We have created for the entire state an investment product. It's an IRA, an auto IRA that these individuals and the small businesses that they work for have the opportunity to build their first, for some of these folks, the first retirement income that they have. Providing dignity in retirement is essential. And I think this flows into a lot of what I'm doing, will be doing as hopefully if I earn your support of people who are watching here to be your next city council person. But it's also extremely important that we look at those who serve us. So these are a lot of the folks who work in restaurants who don't have retirement accounts. And we're going to provide an opportunity for them when they decide to end work, that they can end work in dignity. And we're providing an overlay of financial literacy training across the state of Colorado. So on the Eastern Plains, on the Western Slope, in very small communities, Latino-led communities, and then throughout the Front Ridge, up and down Denver, and within District 9.
So is this for specialized, these are for specialized communities. How much can you defer in that IRA annually?
How much can they defer?
Yeah.
So, it's a basic IRA. So they only have to start with investing like $25
a month. Okay.
And they can stop and start. So they have power. There's no to low cost to the employers, because these are small businesses as well. Latios. So the expense for doing this, it's not something that's prohibitive for employers, small construction companies, restaurants, small businesses, small nonprofits. Any organization with less than, I think, from 10 to fewer employees can participate in this. And our build-out and our architecture of this has been so successful that the state of New Mexico has asked us to help build their plan as well. So we're doing a cross-state program and rolling that out in October.
Wow.
And we haven't even rolled out yet, and the state of New Mexico has asked us to
The New Mexico?
Yeah.
Wow, this is great. Because, New Mexico is a very impoverished state.
Correct.
Correct. Yes, they would definitely need something for that.
Correct.
Especially with the inflation and everything. It's going to be amazing. That's awesome.
And this is long term. The impacts of inflation are, as you know from being in financial literacy, it's a point in time, and folks are feeling pain now, but in the long term, inflation will come under control.
Right.
Costs will come under control. Interest rates will stabilize. But if you begin investing $25 a month in your IRA account and you leave it, you don't pull it out immediately and go buy a car or buy whatever else. You let it sit. It builds. Once again, I was 50 years old when I fully retired and do not need to work again in my life. I'm not.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I'm not any celebrity, but it's smart investment and understanding, having financial literacy. Yes. And I look young for 50 too. That's it.
Well, I'm right behind you. I hit my 51 mark this year.
That's great.
Oh my God, this is, I did not know all these amazing things, and I'm so glad you're here because this is what the community needs to know about you.
Yes.
So as you said, your mom pushed you forward because you did go work, was it the city or the state after teachers?
Well, at teachers, I started a consulting firm.
Okay.
And so we provide strategic planning, justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion support
Like
for
JEDI.
nonprofits, JEDI work. I'm a Star Wars nerd, so I love saying JEDI instead of just DE&I, but it hits what we do.
Yeah.
But for nonprofits, for-profits, and governmental agencies. So as an example, the former Johnson & Wales campus was purchased by this amazing land use organization called Urban Land Conservancy. They purchased the property, and they needed to have partners to help fill out the full campus. So we helped them with bringing in Denver Public Schools to purchase part of that property, and also to support the Denver Housing Authority can also be on that property to build very affordable housing on the property. Not to build, but to provide affordable housing in the existing dorms that are there.
Okay.
And then also to provide an expansion of a high school onto the campus, and we have many other nonprofit partners. So our consulting firm worked with Urban Land Conservancy and those folks to work through that process, build some governance as to how those organizations are going to work together, and then have a community-informed process to make sure the community was saying, these are the things I want on the campus, and that we're able to meet them. So that's an example of what our consulting firm, the Watson Wayne Group, does.
That's the name of the firm.
Yes.
And you and your partner run it together, is that correct?
Correct, yeah. My husband and I, we incorporated in 2018, and we launched it in September 2020.
And it sounds very successful.
We're doing well.
Let me ask you this. So you said affordable housing on the dorms. Are they like a little apartment? So how does that work? What are they paying? Elaborate on that a little bit for me, please.
So I think the power with having a collaboration with a housing leader like Department of Housing Authority, as well as Archway Communities, that focuses on extremely deeply affordable living. So, for example, with with DHA, the
Denver Housing Authority.
Denver Housing Authority,
Right.
what they're focusing on is for folks who make less than 30% of the area median income. So that would be folks who are making less than $30,000.
Okay.
It's not just one bedroom or studios. The dorms are being retrofitted for families. So you will have up to 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms at times in some of these dorms for larger families to live in. Archway Communities as well. I mean, they are retrofitting the existing dorms on the Urban Land Conservancy, the former Johnson & Wales campus. It's now named the Mosaic Community Campus. And so they are retrofitting those dorms to fit not just individuals and singles and studios, but also families. And they will be deeply affordable. And if you know Park Hill, there's not a lot of deeply affordable housing on that side of Colfax. And so it will be one of the first opportunities for folks who may have been displaced from redlining or etc. from living in Park Hill to be able to get back into Park Hill and live on this sprawling, beautiful campus. And we're happy to be a part of that process.
So I do want you to tell the audience, please discern the difference between affordable and low income, because I believe, so I was able to get an affordable home.
Yes.
I'm so grateful. But please discern, because the mentality is people think affordable means it's low income, and it's not the same. So can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Correct. So there's affordable and there's deeply affordable. And so affordable can be between folks are making $60,000 to about $90,000.
Right.
When the City and County of Denver or the Department of Housing Stability speak to affordable housing and affordability. That's their number. It could go above 90,000 up to about 100,000. Often folks refer to that as missing middle development. So that's educators, firefighters,
yes.
etc.
Yeah.
Folks who actually serve, but they are not making mid-six figures.
Yes.
And so that is affordability. Those are communities that we need living in our neighborhoods.
Yes.
Our teachers who teach our youth, we need them to be able to afford to live in Cole and live in Whittier,
yes.
etc. So that's affordability.
Okay.
What I'm speaking to when it comes to the Mosaic Community Campus, formerly Johnson & Wills campus, is deeply affordable. So I don't use the term low income because that speaks to kind of a direction of funds. So I say deeply affordable because if for folks who are making well less than 30,000, folks who are using subsidies from the city or from the federal government to pay for their rent, like my mom is living in Curtis Park.
Okay.
So it's apartments for folks like that, or 30,000 and less. So our elders, our folks who are transitioning from other levels of housing, even some folks who are moving from being houseless or unsheltered into actually housing will be able to be eligible for this type of housing on this campus. And once again, there is nothing else like it right now in Park Hill when it comes to deeply affordable housing.
So let me ask you this with the deeply affordable, and I like that you gave that new term because low income always had a stigma to me.
Correct, and that's the point. We're growing up in the projects. I don't like anyone looking at me as low, so I use the term deeply affordable.
I love that, and thank you for educating me because I'm into EDI or JEDI as well.
Yes.
So that's a new term. I do want to talk about, and the reason I did want you to distinguish between affordable and deeply affordable is because with the deeply affordable, I do get some subsidizing, like Section 8. So would they be confined to staying within that income while they're there? Or whereas when you buy affordable, you have to be in a certain income at that time, but you can make $1 million later on. That was the distinction I wanted you to discern with this new housing project.
Correct, and Latios, that is important. And when it comes to housing policy, there's a spectrum within that policy.
Yeah.
So deeply affordable housing is not a wealth building opportunity. Okay. So you are subsidized through tax dollars. You're subsidized for your housing. You're not able to sell that at a profit or build equity. And some folks feel that is unfair. For me, I think there has to be a stairs towards wealth.
Right.
And so if you are receiving subsidized housing, that does not preclude you for once you are on your feet and you are rising up and you're living out your best life, if you can afford more, to move to an apartment where or housing, a condo or a single family home where you can build wealth. For public policy, and this goes back to running to become a city council member, we need to look for policy that meets folks where they're at.
I love it.
So equity building is not part of the deeply affordable. It's ensuring that the alternative doesn't occur to folks who are going into deeply affordable, meaning them living houseless or living on the streets. It's not a step to build equity at that point, but it doesn't preclude you from taking the next step. And there are very transparent, very supportive steps that the Department of Housing Stability and other partners can do to get you to that next step.
I'm so glad that you said that because I was wondering, how do they transition people from going deeply affordable to actually just buying a home that's $500,000? I know a lot of times, and I'm going to be doing interviews with CHAFA and Habitat for Humanity soon to give my feedback, because a lot of times they're setting these people up with affordable housing, but the mindset of being a homeowner and dealing with HOAs has not been embedded in them on how to, so they're not really setting them up for success. Does that make sense? I have concerns with that. Like I was lucky to get a grant. I got a $50,000 grant to get my home.
It's a blessing.
Yes, it was, and it was. I think that was the last one. But there was restrictions. You know, you'd be in the home, and after 5 years, you don't have to pay it back. But my mindset, because this is not my first home. I owned another home before, but a lot of people coming in don't understand HOAs. They don't understand, you are responsible for your home.
Yes.
You're not a renter anymore.
Yes.
So what are your transitory steps, especially becoming councilman, Denver City Councilman? What are those steps to transform from, deeply affordable to the next? Let's talk about it.
So I think that's an important distinction, Ladios, financial literacy, and also the importance of your personal responsibility once you become a homeowner. The city doesn't do a good job at that. I'll be very honest. I'll say organizations like CHAPA does. And when I received my grant, I had to go through 6 months of training as far as understanding home ownership and the power of home ownership, understanding my credit, all of that. But that ended once I purchased my first home. That didn't continue for any of the other purchases of homes. As a city council person with a financial literacy background, I think that's important to know the background of folks that you're electing. It will be a part of my process to ensure that once we are looking at the specific affordable housing mandates that we have for, number one, development, as well as for providing housing for residents across the city and county of Denver, that there is a very clear financial literacy discussion that's provided to them. So if you are qualified for affordable housing at $60,000 and up to $100,000, that there is financial literacy opportunities provided to you. That you can choose a nonprofit that you can sit with and talk through what's the importance of home ownership. Where do I move my trash? All of the things, snow shoveling, just the basics. Those aren't part of the contract for being eligible for affordable housing, but those can be something that are provided as an opportunity. And I think being someone who stresses the importance of financial literacy, I will, as a city council person, within our process for affordable housing and affordable housing mandates, will make sure that we actually stream that into that dialogue. You receive a home, you receive a list of agencies and nonprofits that can provide financial literacy to help you understand the power of this purchase and also the longevity and the responsibilities that you have.
That's great. So we are definitely now into the part where we're talking about you running for city council. You said your mom motivated you to get here. How did you go from financial literacy to politics? Because, and I'm going to talk about 3 of your priorities that you listed on your website. We have already kind of skated over and talked, we kind of delved deep in one of them. Because you may be running against Candy Tabaka, possibly. Did she hear that she's running?
That is correct. I mean, the current council member has filed. I'm not certain what date, but they are our official candidate for a city council district 9.
Okay. And so with that, I know her particular thing was, displace or, unhoused people that were homeless. And I know you talked about, the affordable housing because it's like $2,500 for a 1-bedroom. I don't even understand that. How can they charge this kind of when there's so much homelessness? I even found out just recently they put rocks where they were camping out. I was floored. I found this out like yesterday. I did not know this. So is that a part of your campaign, of one of your priorities that you want to tackle?
It is, Ladios, and I want to say to the audience very clearly.
Yes.
The plight of the unsheltered is not simply a stigma on them, but it's on the city. And let me be clear, the solution is a city policy, city decisioning and process. We're not going to solve homelessness in the city and county of Denver. It's a regional, it's a state, it's a national situation. Right. But we can do better than what we're doing. There is a lot of flash around whether folks are supporting unsheltered communities or not. And I want to get to some basics as far as what supporting folks who are unsheltered means and what compassion means. Okay. Let me give you a few numbers. There are currently, I would say, on average, and this number I'm sure is low, up to 200 folks who die unsheltered every year in the city and county of Denver. That's a shame.
That is a shame. And I did a research. The percentage of them being unsheltered is not because they're on drugs. Some of them have mental health, and some of them have jobs, but they cannot afford to live.
Correct.
They cannot. So, like I think the statistic was about 75 to 80%. They have jobs.
Correct.
And see, we have a misconception that homeless people are, on drugs. That's a very small percentage. Very small.
Correct. And that fits into kind of what I'm saying, Latios.
Yes.
I mean, I think it's important to come back to the reality of what is the impact on the unsheltered. I mean, folks sleeping on our streets are dying.
Right.
And they're dying on a regular basis, upwards of $200. The idea right now, or the sense that folks have that being compassionate is simply allowing folks to continue sleeping on the streets and making them a tad bit more comfortable. Give them an extra sleeping bag, give them an extra tent. It comes from the goodness of people's hearts. When they drive down, they drop off a tent, or they do whatever they're doing.
But that's not enough.
But that isn't enough. And I share where my rooting is on this issue. My oldest sister died homeless on the streets.
I'm so sorry.
So I hear you. I mean, it is with me. It's with my family. One of the reasons why I'm running is because of this, and one of the reasons why my mom said, you need to get into this race. When you have a loved one that dies unsheltered, you never lose that feeling that you are not able to save their lives, no matter what you did. You were not able. So she had health issues. She became addicted to opioids because of her health issues. Became resistant to opioids when it came to pain relief, and started taking stronger drugs, and then started getting the drugs on the streets. Was not able to keep her house or home, and we would lose her for months. Couldn't find where she's at, frantically trying to search for her. And it was, she had a brain tumor.
Was this in Denver?
This was not in Denver. This was between Florida and the Virgin Islands.
Oh, wow.
But she had a brain tumor that was inoperable. And so they gave her 6 months. She lived for 10 years. And so over that 10-year period, we tried everything we could, and there was nothing. We felt powerless to it. And so the first thing I share to folks when it comes to how I will deal with folks who are unhoused in our community is that a public policy process for me will not be that we need to create another process for folks to sleep, continue sleeping on our streets. That's not. My sister wanted housing, but didn't have the support from the municipalities that she was in to get. So how do we deal with the houseless, and what's my steps on it? What I described for affordable housing and deeply affordable is not specific to folks who are living houseless. I mean, that was not a part of my plan. The first thing in my plan, I think many of the folks in the audience will be shocked to know that the city and county of Denver does not have an accurate count of how many people actually are sleeping on the streets. We don't know what that number is.
And how would we even find out?
Well, there's a point-in-time count that's required by the Department of Housing. The national HUD, federal HUD provides that every city does a point-in-time count on one day, one night every year. The evening that point-in-time count was in the city and county of Denver was so cold that they were discouraging volunteers from getting out there and doing that count. So understanding how you're providing housing for folks who are unhoused, the first thing you have to have is a knowledge of how many folks are actually there. So the hundreds of millions that we're spending it on a number that's not accurate. That has to change. And that doesn't mean the folks who work for the Housing Stability Department that they're doing anything wrong. They're doing what they're supposed to do. As a policymaker, I intend to ensure within the budget there's sufficient funding to allow for outreach workers to not just one time a year, but throughout the year, seasonally. We know there's migration from other regions, from other places where people living on our streets. And transition. So if we're just counting one time out of the year and saying that's the number of houseless, that is wrong. So we have to know the number that we're fighting to save. in order for us to actually have an impact on reducing folks who are houseless. We can't say we're reducing it by 2%, 4%, 3%, whatever, if we don't know what that number is. And so as a policymaker, as a city council member,
Yes.
I won't be doing holding rallies in front of encampments. I'm going to make sure we're counting encampments. We're identifying folks, and then with that identification, without impacting their privacy, we'll identify folks who have need additional mental health support, who need drug addiction support, who need job support and recruitment support. We can do that by uniquely identifying folks without listing their names and their biographies, and we can find them through the system a process. So right now we have a broken process for knowing who's living on our streets and what are their needs. We're providing mental health and substance abuse support across the board. Anytime there is a contact, we're providing flyers, outreach workers are doing this across the board, but it's not targeted to the communities who may need it the most.
And that's what we need, someone super passionate about going beyond just the surface. And
Correct.
I've never even heard of that
Correct.
before, of a solution.
Correct.
And that was one of your priorities.
That is
to bring common sense leadership to confront out housing crisis. There was number 2, which was to improve and expand parks and green spaces. Let's talk about that, because every time I see a developer speaking, and they're killing our parks, and then they're putting these little tiny parks, like it looks like a dog park, and it's not enough. And we need oxygen, we need greenery, we need stuff. So talk about that for me a little bit.
Yeah, so parks are a big priority, and you'll see a difference in me and the other candidates running for City Council in District 9, because I've committed my life to increasing park space, not just in District 9, but across the city.
I love that.
And I've actually done it, and it can be counted, what I've done. It's not once in a while, it's been a part of my life, it's where I'm rooted. And it goes back to when I was a kid. I know that parks are the great equalizer when it comes to communities living in poverty. And so first and foremost, quick narrative, like all kids when we're young, we have summer break, we come back to school in the fall, and the teacher asks us to write, how did you spend your summer? Where did you go on your summer vacation? When you're dirt poor, you don't have summer vacation. And even on an island, we didn't. And so we had lots of folks who can talk about going to this place or that place, but we really didn't have that. What my mom would do once a year, every year when we were young, she would buy a ticket to St. John, which is our sister island.
Yes.
It's 75% of it's a national park. 75% of the island is a national park.
Yeah.
And her ticket was like $5. All of our tickets were free because we're so small. She would buy a bucket of chicken. We each would take our blankets and a pillow, and we could spend a night or 2 nights laying on the beach under the stars as our summer vacation for less than $15 for our family. And when the teacher asked us the next fall, how did you spend your summer vacation, and all the kids that lived on houseboats or who were flying in and out, we're talking about going to Europe or whatever, I could write a 2-page essay on sleeping under the stars on St. John, on the island of Trunk Bay. And I share that because so many of our young leaders, our youth in our communities, in Cole, in Whittier, in Globeville, their escape from life is the parks.
Yep.
They are parks. And so being a park advocate means more because it equalizes the experience of childhood. So what will I do differently for parks? First and foremost, I chair the process for creating the game plan for a healthy city, which is the Parks Master Plan. You'll see, Latios, in a lot of my answers, I go back to data.
Yes.
I go back to facts. I am not so much about rhetoric and about saying speeches about things that we should have. I'm about creating the architecture so that we can actually create not only policy, but that we can implement a process. And within the game plan for a healthy city, it describes a very step-by-step process to ensure that we purchase land in communities that are underserved, communities impacted by redlining, communities that are Black and Latino, to ensure that, number one, we have parks, and number two, the parks that we have are quality parks. And what that means is parks without glass in it, parks without syringes, parks where our kids can go and play just like they do in Wash Park, that they can do right here in D9. We created the architecture for that, and on top of that, we then worked with a group of folks to pass dedicated funding for parks. our parks programs didn't have a dedicated funding. And what that means is it required or relied on the annual budget process through the administration. So whatever the mayor decided they were going to give to parks, that's what parks were doing for its entire history. We changed that dynamic. I didn't wait to become a city council member.
You've been doing it.
We did it. So we created a dedicated funding of upwards of $40 million a year of sales tax dollars that does not impact our families. It impacts people who visit to Denver.
Right.
And so we can now not only purchase land for parks, we can also update and increase the health and quality of the parks in our communities.
Nice.
So we did all of those. And then I became chair of Denver Park Trust, which is a foundation that raises money from folks outside of our communities to give for parks inside of our communities. So as a policymaker, as a city council member, I'm going to look strategically at where we're at as far as the amount of park space, that everyone that lives in Cole, Whittier, Globeville, Clayton, all of our communities in our neighborhood, that they have a 10-minute walk or roll to a healthy park. I'm going to make sure that the funding from the city pays for it. And then I'm going to leverage the foundation that I helped to develop, as well as the allocation of funds from the dedicated funding source to ensure that we create equity in our park space. We ensure that we have folks that look like me living in these communities having access to parks. So that's beyond rhetoric. That's beyond saying we want parks. I've spent the last 15 years building the architecture to ensure that we do have parks.
That is amazing. I want to go through the last one, and then I have a couple of questions from some people from the community. The last one of your priorities was to reduce crime and invest in people. Can you kind of elaborate on that one? That's going to be a very challenging one. And do you think crime, I mean, I've heard that Denver has got a pretty high crime rate, but not as much as Pueblo, believe it or not.
You know, I always find it difficult when we are when we look at statistics and we're like, we're bad, but we are not as bad as the worst. So let me be clear to the audience. When you hear statistics from Channel 7, Channel 4, all the news stations that crime rates are up, it's real. I mean, I meet with District 2 and District 6 police officers now on a monthly basis. As a candidate, I'm asking for an update on what our crime stats are, because it's important to me as a black man that I know within our communities how our communities are impacted by these crime rates, and I also look for solutions.
But what do you think is the problem? I guess that would be because, and then also we also have the other dynamic about the police brutality, and you know, how do we balance that out as well?
Correct, and I'll be clear on both. I think there are two parts. I think number one, crime is going up across the country.
Yes.
In Denver, it's very specific types of crime. So cars being stolen is up almost 600%. I've had a friend that came and visited me, and within 3 days, his car was stolen from in front of our house. He had a Hyundai Tucson. And it's like Hyundais and Kias are being stolen because there's, I think,
remember the Kia boys? The Kia boys, yes.
So that is happening.
I have a Kia.
And that is real, and that is happening. But that is impacting our stats. But the underlying process, where crime is being impacted, is there's a slowing of the economy.
Okay, the poverty.
There's a slowing of the economy, but there's also a sense. And with my discussions with Denver police, I've been very clear to them, is that they have a responsibility. They have pulled back as far as Denver police when it comes to engagement with community. And I'm not giving them a pass on that.
Right.
The George Floyd and all of the situations in which our community came out in large part and screamed for justice is not a rationale for Denver police to allow criminal behavior to be happening in our communities. So see, when we pull back, if we're not here, now see what's going on. That is wrong. So I'm saying to them in the meetings that I'm having with them that has to change. You're hired to do a job. You need to make sure when folks in our communities, when my mom calls you on the phone because something is happening on Park Avenue, that you respond, but also that you respond with respect and you respond with a demonstration of training and that you understand how to contact and how to deal with people of color. I don't give them a pass on any of that.
Right.
But where I am different than maybe other folks who are running for council is that the idea is that we're going to have a solution on crime, a solution on police community
Yes.
Engagement without engaging the police, I think it's a mistake, a complete mistake, because as a policymaker, I'm not an activist.
Right.
It is not you're going to rarely see me marching in parades, and I
You will
don't
not
own,
see me doing that at all.
I don't own a bullhorn,
Right.
and that's not who I am.
Yes, we
But
want to
if-
make change. You could talk
Correct.
about it all day,
Correct.
but we want to. What's the solution? And I'm with you on that
Correct.
100%. And I'm not anti-police.
No.
I don't believe in defunding the police.
Yep.
Just to go back, did you ever hear when the presidency was going and Ice Cube was talking about a contract for Black America, and he broke down about police, how to, what they need to do as far as, training, being reprimanded, wearing their cameras. Did you ever read that Black contract? I thought that was very interesting, because I do think they need some additional training, especially psychological training, because it's not like it used to be when my son was young, and I've never had, except for one experience, I've never had a bad experience with police officers.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not anti-police. I just am not. But I just remember it was very communal when my son and my children were growing up.
Mm-hmm.
I remember my son called the police on me because I had him out. The
Mm-hmm.
police officer was a Black police officer. He was like, "Yo, if you ever do that again,"
Mm-hmm.
he said, "I will whoop your butt myself."
Mm-hmm.
And so I think we lost that community when you're putting, for a lack of better terms, when you're putting officers that don't look like us in our community. Does that make sense?
I agree. And
Yeah.
let me say 2 quick points.
Yes.
The first thing is, I've been racially profiled. I actually chaired the Bias Policing Task Force for the City and County of Denver. And once again, when I chaired that, my focus wasn't to prove that racial profiling occurs, because I know it did.
Yeah.
I'm saying a lot of people spend a lot of time screaming about the police need to admit that it occurred. I know it occurs. It occurred to me. But what my focus was exactly what you just said, Larios. We wanted to look at the data when police were contacting community members, especially Black or brown community members.
Yes.
What was the instance in which they were finding contraband on when they weren't? As far as the same contacts with whites, at what percent? And we found year over year they were finding more contraband on whites, yet Blacks were still being stopped more year over year over year.
Yes.
What we also saw is that in the Black communities and the brown communities where they were being stopped, community policing, meaning police officers touching communities outside of criminal contacts, were almost non-existent. So what that means to me, number one, we used to have a program in Denver where police officers were able to purchase homes in the neighborhoods where they were.
Right.
Black officers, Latino officers were able to live in Globeville, were able to live in Whittier, were able to live in Cole. That program doesn't exist anymore. I'm going to be pushing for that to be a part of a new policy that we just delivering through the Department of Housing Stability, where you have priority housing for folks looking for affordable housing. So having officers and educators living in the community, so when your son was growing up, next door there was a Black officer, and so they're like, okay, not all police officers are bad. So what is that Black officer doing that's different? Those would be the things that Ice Cube talked about. It's ensuring that you have not only just the competency to, how to pull your gun, how to drive your car, but you have emotional competence, and that's part of your training. That's evaluated, that you understand the communities that you are serving, and it is an actual skill to build emotional competence. That is important. Holding police officers accountable for the ones who are contacting and are demonstrating that they are not living up to what their serve and protect credo is. So the new chief that still needs to be fully appointed, Deputy Thomas and I have had this discussion. We need to make sure that police are held accountable, because when we don't do that, it impacts how we all feel about all police officers, and it gives this thought process that all police are bad, and they're not.
And they
it's
are
a
not.
small part of their community that's doing a lot of this damage, and we have to do that. Also, when it comes to the payouts, the millions of dollars that the city has paid out because of police abuse within our communities, we need to make sure that tangibly, that we understand, the police understand their fiscal impact to this city and their ability to stop us from moving forward. We need the new chief to put a stop to any of those behaviors in which our city now is being sued for. So when they're contacting folks, that there is increased focus on, if there is a protest, if there is engagement within our communities, what you should be doing. The chief of police should be evaluated, not only based on the performance, the number of officers hired, but also, are they spending millions of dollars in lawsuits? If they are, then they are not doing their job.
Yes.
And that should be a part of the process. And so I am not anti-police either. I have police officers in my family. I support police officers who are doing it the right way. I believe they need housing in our community, so we are growing up with them. But they must be held accountable, and that impacts them worse than us. If you have a community that does not support the Denver police, and there's a police officer coming down Ray Street and there's someone trying to do them harm, and you already think that police officer is bad, how soon will you tell that police officer, look around, this person is coming after you? That you're not.
Right, exactly.
So their lives are on line if their behavior doesn't change.
Exactly.
So it's not just our lives. So that's kind of where I'm at on this. And because I have officers in my family, I'm even stronger on the piece. They have to be at a table in these discussions, but they also have to be held accountable if they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing.
I love that. I love that. I just wanted to kind of add something on something you said. I have she was a mentor. She's actually a teacher in the UK. She said in the UK, the police officers do not carry guns. They have to be a police officer for at least 5 years before they can carry a gun. And they said they almost never have to pull out their gun. Almost never. Yeah. So I want to get to a couple of questions.
I want to hit one other thing. I didn't speak about the STAR program, which was a great program that actually came out of the Denver police. This wasn't created outside of the police. They came up with a program in which police officers do not have to respond to every call. That if it is not a call that requires a police officer with a weapon there, that they're sending counselors, they're sending mental health support folks. It is important. And so
that's amazing.
It's great. And within the budget process, within the Department of Housing Stability and the board that I'm on, we just informed their budget process, and they are increasing the amount of spend on the STAR program. So they're doubling down on this, and this program began in Denver, and now it's spreading across the country. So
that's amazing.
Having the right response for the right situation, I think also reduces that. So we talk a lot about policing, but oftentimes the police aren't necessary in these contexts. We need to have a different response. And Denver Police has agreed to this. The funding is in the budget for it, and that's a public policy decision. That's not us on the street screaming at officers. That's us looking for solutions, and that STAR program is one of those solutions, and we're funding it.
So I'm like just flabbergasted because I did an interview a year ago with a retired Detroit police officer, and he said when he was a police officer in Detroit, of course he was communal, but he said if someone called and said, "Oh, the dog is barking," they wouldn't send a police officer out. They would send someone like community outreach or somebody, a caseworker or something like that. So this is great because then they could be called for really important things that needs to be addressed instead of over here and over here. And that's amazing.
And it's reducing the context that can cause harm to community members, especially mental health situations. This
is amazing. So we're going to get to a couple of questions. There was three, but one of you already asked, but just so I can just let the community know. What changes are you going to make to the community? We've heard that already. So one of them was, what kind of help do you need from the community to make these changes?
Well, that's a big question.
Let's keep it short.
Need a lot. And
give us 3 points.
I'll give you very clearly. The first thing is I think the community at large needs to be informed. It needs to be involved. The things that are impacting our city, from the housing crisis to increasing crime to lack of outdoor and healthy spaces, all of these things will impact our lives immediately. We don't have 5 more years to make change. So I need community members, some who may not have been involved in the process in 2019 or before, to get involved, be informed. Right. Go to my website, www.watson, WATSON4FORdenver.com. Volunteer. Give me your input. Give me your ideas. And then hold me accountable. And so those are the 3 things. So get involved in your neighborhood. Get involved on this campaign if you believe that I'm speaking in a voice that resonates with you or elevates where you're at. And then also really make sure that you're holding accountable the folks that you support. It may be someone that you like a lot, that gives a lot of great rhetoric about what they're doing, but substantially your life has not been better since they've been in office. Hold them accountable and don't just accept them to roll over again for another 4 years.
Okay, and then I want you to look into this camera right here, and I want you to say, tell the people why they should vote for you.
Thanks, Ladios. I want to say once again, thank you so much for having me on air. The why folks should vote for me. I think we are at a turning point in our city, and I think you see it and you feel it. I've been in Denver since 1987, and I feel the desperation of folks who live here who feel like they don't recognize their city anymore. They don't recognize us when it comes to when you think about the crime stats. They don't recognize us when it comes to affordability. They don't recognize us when they walk outside their doors and they try to go to a park or they try to live a healthy life. They don't recognize their city. As I just stated, we don't have 4 more years to hit these changes. So why should you vote for me? I believe myself that, number one, in common sense leadership. I think a city council member is a policymaker. They actually work collaboratively with other council members to pass legislation that impacts your life. If you are looking for someone who will sit and listen to community and allow community to elevate solutions for the things that are impacting their families, and that for that person to then take that to council and sit with 6 other members, because you need 7 votes to pass anything on council. I'm that person. I've demonstrated through all of my work within community that I bring folks together. I'm not going to spend a lot of time mean tweeting or angry tweeting people. I'm not going to spend a lot of time attacking others. I'm going to spend my time focused on the issues, and I have demonstrated from my work at TIAA, all of my work within community, that I will put the voices of community first, and I'll put my hubris, I'll put my ego beneath them. I believe in servant leadership. And what that simply means is that I am here to serve you. I'm not going to ask you to change where you're at to meet my style or my leadership thoughts. I want to hear how you want your city to grow, how you want us to work together for a stronger, more prosperous Denver that ensures that all of us can live in the neighborhoods that we grew up in, that we're not displaced, and if we're displaced, that we can rely on policies that we are drafting right now to increase the priority for you to come back to the city that you love. I love Denver.
Me too.
I love this city, and with all that's going on, I am optimistic. But my optimism isn't in just my strength and my policy wonkiness. It's in you. I know that you can make the change within the city that's necessary, and I'm going to rely on you. I'm going to be knocking the door 2, 3, 4, 5 times. I'm going to be calling you and your mama, asking for your support. Please reach out to me at Watson, WATSON, for FORDenver.com. That's www.watsonfordenver.com. Reach out to me at any time, and I promise to be responsible. I promise to be responsive, and I promise to elevate you in part of the solution and bringing Denver back to being the city that we recognize for all of our people.
Do you have any other social media handles that you would like to provide our audience? Any Instagrams, Facebook?
Yeah, so on Twitter it's at Darrell D. Watson, and on Facebook it's watsonfordenver.com.
Watsonfordenver.com. Producer P, do you have any questions for our potential city council?
I have one.
Yes, please.
So earlier you were speaking about the investment part.
About what?
The Roth accounts, like RA.
IRA accounts.
Yes.
So can you tell people the difference between a 501k and an IRA Roth account and the pros and cons of having each one?
Yeah. I'm not your advisor, so I can't give you advice legally, so just know that I made that disclaimer. But the difference with a 401k, that's usually a plan through your employer. An IRA is liquid. I mean, you remember Ladios in the beginning spoke about where's your liquidity. So you could say you own a house, but you can be house poor because you don't have liquidity to meet your needs. This direct IRA that we're opening for over 900,000 Coloradans will be liquid. And so we're going to overlay a financial literacy piece to make sure that they don't pull all those funds out in 6 months. But if they choose to, they can. There's tax consequences based on your age, but you have those liquid funds. That's the biggest difference. So 401k is if you're with an employer and they're offering it, take it. Ask them for a match. Most employers today, especially because we're in a hybrid work situation,
Yes.
they're doing any and everything they can to keep employees. So if you have a job and your employer isn't matching your 401k, say, match my 401k, I'm going down the street.
Mm-hmm.
The same with a 403b. They're both insurance-laden plans that are for investments through an institution's retirement planning. Individual account, anyone, anywhere, whether your employer has it or not, can open an IRA and build it for retirement.
And a matching is just basically if you say I'm going to put in 6%, they're
Yeah.
going to match it with 6% of your salary as well.
Correct.
So it's like free money that you get on top of the money you put in.
You gotta ask me, because I say black folks don't. I mean,
Yeah.
Ladios and I both worked at TIAA,
Yeah.
and I'll say a lot of our fellow colleagues didn't fight for the match and didn't actually invest at the level that the match actually made
Yeah.
sense. And so we need to fight for every one of those dollars.
Yes, and there's so much. It's so broad. It's a beautiful thing. Finance. I love finance. I love it. I like it. I like science when it comes to money. So, Mr. Watson, you might be our potential city council, district city council for District 9.
Yes.
And I want to, from the bottom of my heart, I thank you for coming. I thank you for taking time to come here. I've learned so much about you, stuff I didn't even know. The future looks bright. We want to circle back, after,
Yes.
the vote, see whether you win,
Yes.
whether you win or win.
Yeah.
We want to circle back and have further discussions. But in the meantime, in between time, thank you so much for coming. I am Ladios Muhammad. Remember to live authentically and live with valor. Until next time, see you at the top because the bottom's too crowded.